Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Welcome, guys.
All right, guys. Today's date, September the 6th, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week, try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we do try to be a news podcast in the highest respectful way, which means we are taking only sources from reputable award-winning journalism. We are not taking from the extreme in entertainment or far left or far extreme right-sided areas such as Newsmax, Fox News, The Blaze, or whatever Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens is on. You know where they are, but just be honest. At the same time, we do try to watch the language. Sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So how do we actually start this? There's no other way I could say this, but I got to start with Tim Scott, the only black man who decided to run Republican and has been a senator for a while. Yes, Mr. Tim Scott himself. He said he's not doing too well. He isn't. I mean, he had to know being a black man running on a Republican ticket for the presidential nomination was about as hopeful as getting the winning lottery ticket in a Powerball and Mega Millions. I'm just saying. He says he wants to be more aggressive. Tim Scott, more aggressive. How more aggressive can a doormat actually be? I'm just saying. He tried to unveil himself with a federal tax plan that kind of echoed the late Herman Cain in a way. He tried to sit there and say he wanted to introduce a 12-point plan that reduced social media impacts, wanted to put more parental control of the child's education, and wanted to use federal tax dollars to fund homeschooling. Riveting, although all the things have already been said before. And again, this is the one thing I keep saying about Tim Scott, that he doesn't seem to, for either he is ignoring the obvious or just hoping that somehow it works out in his favor. Tim Scott, you are a black man in a GOP environment where literally the Republican Party is not set up or has never been set up or is currently designed to be against minorities, women, and anybody else except rich, old, white men. That's all it's designed for. The fact that he is literally touting their politics has always led me to believe that there's a certain thing about black conservatives that unless somehow, some way, and I still say this, it must be the check, because conservatives love when minorities sound like them, because it validates them. It validates their racism, their bigotry. So for Tim Scott, that's the way I can imagine. I mean, Tim Scott really came off the Tea Party. The party that nobody talks about, that was good, that was like hot for a minute, and that the same party that came up around President Obama's second term and talking about we're going to take back the White House, we're going to take our country back before the rise of that failure in Chief Trump. Yeah, Tim Scott rode that way and has been here ever since. But Tim Scott has no original ideas. He has single-handedly killed both the George Floyd police reform bill. He's also killed the Representative John Lewis bill, which actually would have helped voting. It was only him, but Joe Manchin as well. The man has killed a number of bills he said he hoped to bring together. But the bills that he worked on never came to pass because, again, they echoed conservative statements. And he also, again, he said, I back the police because I trust them. I comply. He's the exact hand puppet for all napkin Americans. And yet he wonders in the political world why he's not being loved. Because, Tim, you're a black man running in GOP. Good freaking luck. That's all I can say about that, Mr. Tim Scott. Good luck, because you might get a few votes, but I just want to point something out here. Just really want to point something out. If the GOP in Georgia's special election threw everything they could to ensure that Reverend Raphael Warnock at the time did not become Georgia's first black senator in a state that's predominantly red, flip blue in a special election, and the GOP did everything they could to ensure that him and any other second senator, Joel Orsak, to the simple fact of the matter is they did everything they could to make sure he and other said senator didn't get elected. Now, if the GOP was willing to do that for a state, could you imagine what they'll be willing to do to make sure that a black person is not the head of their table? Considering the fact that so many of them would never want that. So again, Tim Scott, it's great and all that you're trying to run. And, again, for black conservatives, I guess this is great for you guys too, just because I guess some validation is given to you guys, because again, black conservatives to me are just like individuals that have learned that, hey, if I say this, I get paid. If I say this, I get endorsements. If I say this, I'm at CPAC. If I say this, I'm at the American Faith and Values Conference. If I say this, I'm getting sit right next to Dorito. I'm getting the rub, as they say in wrestling. You're getting the rub. Hey, if you're chasing the bag, I'm not knocking for it, but be honest. Because again, Tim Scott, be honest. You have no originality. You have no plan. You're basically a conservative parrot that is echoing everybody else. But swearing up and down that you'll be able to stand up, which I have to give it to that old man, that diner that sat there and said, if you can't even stand up to Trump, how are you going to stand up to Russia and China? Old man's got a point. But it's not only him that's going to have a hard time in the Republican nomination. Nikki Haley is also the only woman that is running for the presidential nomination. Nikki Haley, that's not her real name, by the way, is also having issues because they're trying to not make it seem, as you see there in the CNN headline, that her gender is rarely mentioned on the campaign trail and always present. Now, could you imagine? And again, I say imagine because it wasn't too long ago that we actually had the idea that maybe, possibly, maybe we would have had a Madam President. I wouldn't have been against it. I thought Hillary was qualified. She's been a first lady. She's been a senator. She's been a secretary of state. I think the lady is qualified. However, a lot of people didn't like Hillary, and a lot more people like Trump, and that's how Trump became in office. But Nikki Haley throwing her hat in the ring. Again, the fact that you're running under a GOP bill makes no sense. The GOP hates everybody but rich old white men. And yes, some of them said, but Sarah Palin. Let me stress this very quickly. What Sarah Palin was. Sarah Palin was basically a stripper that was designed to be a vice president. She was eye candy. There was nothing smart that she was saying. There was nothing groundbreaking. She just looked attractive to old white men who go to Hooters and Twin Peaks not for the food. They just go there for the visual. Let's just call it what it is. The point I'm saying out of this is Nikki Haley is the polar opposite. She has nothing new to say, except, and I will give her credit, except for the one time during the first debate, she didn't sound like a Republican. She didn't. She did not sound like a Republican. She actually sounded progressive. She sat there and placed the blame on where our economy is, and she sat there and said that the Republicans caused the problem. The Republicans, not the Democrats. She literally said the Republican caused the problem. And you know what's so funny about that? She got a little bit of applause. And I sat there and said to myself, when I was watching that crap show of a debate, I said, wow, one candidate said something thought-provoking. I guarantee she'll never get votes. Not there. Because the one thing Republicans hate the most, they'll place blame on everybody else. But oh, do they become the victims when the blame is put on them? Oh, that's not us. That's Biden. There's got to be at some point where Biden has to be responsible for the economy and not for what Trump did. What Trump does in destruction is unparalleled, by the way. I mean, he is the president that had a one term, but yet in one term, this man has done more financial destruction for an economy of this size. And to him, it probably was Tuesday. But again, going back to Nikki Haley, she's going to have a hard time. What I mean by that, folks, is that, again, you are a woman trying to run for office in the GOP. Good luck. You're not, I mean, I said, Sarah Palin, like I said before, she was only there to energize John McCain. She was only there to get the eye candy. She was the eye candy on his arm. And of course, if you follow Sarah Palin's track record and all the many things that have come from that, she was a marketing machine. She was a marketing machine. I'll give her that. Politician? Hell no. Nikki Haley? Great politician to a certain degree. She can talk the talk. She can blame everybody. But just like Senator Tim Scott, good luck trying to get votes, especially in a GOP environment. Because yes, and I'm going to get on the Democrats too, because the Democrats are going to have a voting problem as well. But the Republicans have a problem. Their voter base is dying out. Their voter base, which is basically older white men, is dying out. And the problem with the Republican base is, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I cannot believe I'm saying this. Failure-in-chief Trump's former publicist sat there and said, if only Republicans went to minority neighborhoods, they would find out that a lot of black people are conservative. Which I'm not saying that's not entirely true. There might be some conservatives out there, again, reasons being beyond my comprehension why you want to be conservative. But at the same time, what she was doing at that point, sat there and saying Republicans are ignoring a voter base that they refuse to tap into, minorities, specifically black people. And for the simple fact of the matter, it again rings true because look where they're going. Tim Scott's not going to black neighborhoods. You'll never see Nikki Haley anywhere near a housing projects. You will never see representatives where you think they should be seen because we still have this stupid battle map. And I'm not saying Republicans never will, because let's be honest, they never will. But right now in the political game is built around certain states, certain polls. And unless you hit certain states, and unless you're at the top of certain polls, then your road to presidency is mighty short. And that's another problem that one day we'll go into what's wrong with U.S. elections. But again, to Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, I feel like you two are like the first people on Wheel of Fortune that were just around for the first couple of fill in the blanks and just never made it. But thanks for coming out. Meanwhile, let's switch to that dumpster fire failure in Trump, because a lot of his cronies, all 19 of them, had to report to Georgia to get fingerprinted and booked for their upcoming trials. Each of them have different trials according to different charges. And they all thought the same thing. Well, Trump got a mugshot and he got $9 million. Surely that they will help me. And surely Trump will help me because he believes in his people. Yeah, a lot of them are finding out they got to pay their own legal bills.
A lengthy and expensive legal battle in the Georgia election interference case, and they say they are struggling to pay for it. The former president isn't helping them with their legal bills, and a source says they haven't asked him to, but they are having to get creative to pay for their defense. CNN's Kristen Holmes has been following this for us. Kristen, obviously a legal defense like this could cost a hefty sum. How are they going to pay for it?
Yeah, Boris, that's right. And just to be clear here, former President Trump has paid the bills of many of his aides and advisors and employees, both current and former, in both the January 6th committee investigation as well as those federal investigations. And so much so that the Save America PAC, which has been footing these legal bills, has spent more than $41 million since 2021. That is an extraordinary feat. But obviously, when it comes to Georgia, that is not the case. And as you said, we are told that even with all these grumblings about these defendants not having their bills paid by Donald Trump, no one has formally asked him yet. However, they are coming up with these creative ways to raise money. And one of them is crowdfunding. We know at least 4 of the co-defendants have started crowdfunding. That includes Jenna Ellis, one of his attorneys, John Eastman, another election attorney, Jeffrey Clark, who is that DOJ official at the center of much of this, and Kathy Latham, who is a fake elector in Georgia. The other thing we have heard is that Rudy Giuliani, his family, his son, has helped create a PAC, political action committee, to help pay his legal bills. Now, Donald Trump is helping a little bit with Giuliani, not necessarily footing the bill. However, he is hosting a fundraiser at his Bedminster resort next week. That is $100,000 a person, and he is considered the headliner there. But again, these are going to be very big bills. And one of his co-defendants actually spent a week in jail because he couldn't afford an attorney.
And that's funny. Normally you shouldn't laugh at anybody in jail, but that's funny because these are all individuals that follow Trump. These are all individuals that sat there and said, this is our president in chief, all the way up to indictment, and realizing when it comes to covering legal bills, you're on your own. That to me is the funniest part about all of this, because how many more times, and I say this as nicely as humanly possible, how many more times are you people going to have to learn that Trump is in it for himself? I called it last week when I sat there and said, this man is going to do nothing more than use his mugshot and sit there and say, please donate to help us fight against injustice. $9 million. Since that mugshot, 9 million plus donations. It's like we keep on asking ourselves, for a man who has no money, how is he staying flush in cash? It's easy. His cult is paying him. And these same people that followed him thought they were going to piece that pie. And then especially the one black dude who was working for Trump. Ooh, well, I had to spend a week in jail because I didn't have the funds. I feel so sorry for you, because you expected Trump to bail you out. And again, it's the con. It never ceases to amaze me that a man could put a picture of a mugshot out there that he's trying to look as mean and intimidating, but really look like he's constipated because he ate too much cheese. And yet he gets $9 million for it. You can't make that up. But even more so that his people, all of them, including Giuliani, are all strapped for cash. Hosting crowdsourcing and fundraising events where it's $100,000 a plate. For the rich, it's merely a tax write-off. But I cannot imagine $100,000 a plate event, and you're going to help keep certain people out of jail. Which in my opinion, if that's the one time I say no bail for all of them. Let them see what the other side is like when you have no options. That to me would have been true justice for a little while. Let them rot in jail, including Dorito himself. But I just thought that was funny because, again, these people who are behind Trump, these people who thought that Trump was going to help them out, only turned around to find out that they are on their own. Riveting. But switching gears for a second, guys, this is going to be hard to say because, again, we have another police shooting. This time because a woman who was 7 months pregnant was shot and killed, and the baby did not survive. So trigger warning on this, guys. They didn't show anything, but still, viewer discretion is advised.
Talking about this disturbing police body cam footage now that's just been released. It's showing the final moments of a pregnant black woman's life. Takaya Young was shot and killed by officers in an Ohio grocery store parking lot last week. We froze the video just before the shooting occurred, but we still want to warn you that it's going to be pretty difficult to watch.
Then get out. No, then get out.
Get out of the car.
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 Shots, your shots fired.
Shots fired. Stop the damn car.
That 21-year-old's name is Takaya Young and was suspected of shoplifting in the Columbus suburb. Well, the mother of two was shot and killed after police say she accelerated her car toward an officer trying to stop her. The unborn child did not survive. London Township Police Chief said in a statement on Wednesday that the department was reviewing and redacting the video before its release. The chief also saying that he spoke to the family's attorney and that he's appreciative of his help coordinating with the family during this difficult time. Joining me now to talk about this, former homicide prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, Bernarda Villalona. So Bernarda, I guess, first of all, I just want to get your reaction to the video from a legal standpoint.
Very difficult to watch this video because there are no winners in this case. Unfortunately, the life of a 21-year-old woman was lost. And then the question is someone criminally responsible for it? I can see the arguments on both sides. It's an issue of fact. Did this officer believe that his life was in imminent danger of death or serious bodily injury? And if that's the case, then there wouldn't be any charges. Then if you look at from the side of the victim here, was she nervous? Was she scared? Was she intending to actually drive through the officer and injure the officer? That's a question that we probably will never know.
So is there anything about this shooting that could be seen in that video? Right. And there's always more to the video. There's minutes, before and after we're seeing this part. But from what you could see, anything there justifiable, or do you think these officers will face charges? And, do you need to see the rest of the video?
So I do need to see additional video footage and actually probably play that video a couple more times, because there is a question of fact, that being, where was the officer exactly at the moment where Miss Young accelerated her vehicle? And did she accelerate after or before he actually went in front of this vehicle? I think because there's an issue of fact, there still has to be additional investigation. The question would be is whether the district attorney's office would put this case before a grand jury and let a grand jury determine the issue of fact, whether it was reasonable for this officer to fire into a moving vehicle, if the vehicle was actually moving at that time.
Got it. All right. Well, an attorney for the Young family says that the family has been frustrated with delays in the police department timeline here of releasing the body cam footage we just saw. It's out there publicly now. They were able to see the video before it was made public. What kind of legal action, if any, are they able to take here?
So there are a couple of avenues. Obviously, criminally, that would be up to a prosecutor's office to determine whether criminal charges are going to be brought in this case. But in terms of a civil case, they can bring a civil case. The question will be, will they be successful at a civil case? You have to think with the civil case and a criminal case, they're different burdens. So while the criminal burden is beyond a reasonable doubt, with a civil burden is more likely than not. Was it reasonable? Was it necessary for this officer to shoot into a moving vehicle that was allegedly going towards his direction? You also have the administrative charges, but the administrative charges more has to do with whether the officer violated any of the office procedure and whether that officer should continue still serving as a police officer. But for now, I think we still have to wait and see. It's only been a week. While it does seem like a long time for the family and for the public, you have to think that an investigation like this takes time in terms of interviewing witnesses, seeing what happened before, after, interviewing the officers, getting all the body camera footage, any 911 calls. So there's a lot to look into this. But I'm not concerned about what happened allegedly prior, and that being the theft in the supermarket, because that is not a reason to shoot an individual.
Okay, so there's one thing I want to point out here, because it's sad that a woman and child their life was lost in all this, but I understand that the criminal defense attorney makes some valid points, but really it should come down to two things: the body cam footage and the officer's testimony. Because let's be honest, not just LAPD, all law enforcement officers are trained to kill. When they are trained to kill, which is kind of a big problem to a certain extent. I understand that sometimes there's situations where a life-taking event is just unavoidable, but there should have been a lot more judgment on this. The woman was called because she was accused of stealing from a grocery store. Come on now. Stealing from a grocery store means that you have to go guns blazing. That's the part that I don't understand. If you're like, my thing is this, and I'm not condoning stealing. I'm not condoning theft. If you stole from a grocery store and you got away with it, I'd write that off. To me, it's a write-off. Number one, if it's food or drink, it's no point. To me, it's like, what am I prosecuting for? Because they stole food. Okay. Well, Will, if you do that, you're just going to be condoning everybody to steal from you. Maybe so, but I don't feel the need to call police on it to where a person's going to lose their life over an accusation. See, that's the key part. As more details come out, this is right now accusation territory. I'm more concerned about what the officers were thinking at the time. Because number one, if you and again, officers should have just talked her down and said, look, we just want to talk to you for a second. They think you stole something. If you would just talk to me, just talk. Okay. If it was said, like I said, for a lot of de-escalation tactics, officers don't use because, again, they feel like their badge and authority just gives them carte blanche to whatever they want. Was that the case in this scenario? We don't know, because the body cam footage is seen by those who help cops. And that's the thing I said about law enforcement. Law enforcement to me is just like Supreme Court. They have to have somebody to answer to, and not from, and I'm not gonna say not cut from the same cloth, but somebody higher than them. That's what I said. That's what I said. With a civilian oversight board, cops hated it, especially here in Nashville. They hated it here in Nashville when they sat there and said, we need a civilian police oversight board. You know who hated it? Cops. And my response was the same thing. And my response, every time a cop said they hated it. If you're doing nothing wrong, then what are you worried about? If you're doing your job, what do you have to worry about? I said that because you know what they always tell us? If you're doing nothing wrong, what do you got to worry about? I repeat their same voice. I repeat that same wisdom they dispose upon us. I give back to them, because that footage will tell us. I mean, honestly, that body cam footage, and again, I was there and say, if body cam footage is ever altered, tampered with, if the cameras are turned off during shift, whatever the excuse is zero tolerance. And again, I also said there and said in a previous podcast, if the officers are found guilty, that police pension fund should be used to pay out to the families of the victims. The way you stop things, especially shootings for minorities from law enforcement in America, attack the money. The police pension of those officers, if so, should be gone to the families victim, to the families of the victim. Watch how quickly shootings reduce. But again, it's just sad because a woman lost her life and lost her baby's life. And now officers are being questioned because, again, they're going to say, well, she was trying to escape from shoplifting at a grocery store. Let her go. I don't understand the need to pull a gun if she's going to go ahead and escape. Let her escape. It's more of a danger to sit there and say, well, I'd rather put them down than have her wreck the car and then hurt other people. Okay. But you realize you escalated, which could have been a simple situation, up to a dangerous situation, because, again, when Black people see police, we start to wonder if we're going to make it home. That's what officers don't understand. A lot of officers really don't care, but some officers need to understand that for a lot of Black people, when they see police, the first thing they're going through their heads is, am I going to make it home tonight? And then that fear, that uneasy tension, officers are not doing their best to de-escalate it. But again, we'll get into officers anyway, because they're having a shortage, and there's a certain video out there that makes me wonder why. But anyway, student loans. You love them, you hate them. Some of us have got them, present company included. Well, the interest is back.
Day ahead for federal student loan borrowers. This morning, interest on their balances will begin to accrue again after a 3-year pandemic pause and ahead of a full restart of loan payments next month. There's already a mix of anxiety and obligation.
If you're getting an education to do something like teaching, like I did, you're going to have a job. So if with the job comes expenses and you need to pay back what you owe.
I think that student debt is really holding back these young people from making other decisions that really could contribute to our economy, and we all are responsible for that.
Many borrowers had their hopes of relief dashed after the Supreme Court struck down President Biden's student loan debt cancellation plan this summer, ruling the president does not have the authority to erase $400 billion in debt without congressional approval.
We find ourselves in a situation where, because of that promise, a lot of us, literally tens of millions of us, made decisions with our lives to move forward.
I didn't give borrowers false hope, but the Republicans snatched away the hope that they were given, and it's real hope.
The White House arguing the plan would have put money back in people's pockets.
They then would give back to the economy, right? Or be able to buy a home, or able to do things that actually build back the economy.
The president is now working on a plan B. He's looking to invoke the Higher Education Act of 1965, which allows government-backed student loans and grants to be adjusted, waived, or outright canceled, though details of the plan and who might benefit are still unclear. While student loan payments will restart October 1st, exact payment dates will depend on the lender. Borrowers should start receiving their new bills in the day.
Yep. And you know, it's interesting because I've said this before, and I will say this again about student loans. It never ceased to amaze me the level of individuals out there that seem to repeat this same phrase. Oh, well, you took out the loans, you need to pay it back. We know that. Well, if you couldn't afford to go to college, maybe you should never try. Well, it's easy for you to say that because for those that may have had assistance, may have had some inheritance, maybe some other means to actually come up with the funds, or maybe went to the armed forces, had your GI Bill, and was able to pay it that way. Good for you. But that doesn't explain everybody. And at the same time, when you're coming up in my generation, I was class 2001. That just tells you how old I am. Class 2001, back then, the biggest thing was, oh man, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. You know, the only way you're going to get this job, you got to have this degree. The only way you're going to get this degree, you got to go to college. You got to get your 4-year degree. You got to get your bachelor's. You got to get your master's. You got to get your PhDs, your doctorates. You have to get all these things. And that gets you the career. That career that has the big paycheck, that's how you're going to get there. But you know what they also didn't sit there and say? That they stressed and pushed college so far ahead that what did that generation do? That generation, my generation, went to college, got degrees. But by the time we got those degrees, we've already been through 2 wars at that point. Iraq and Afghanistan, been through 2 wars. We've seen a recession. We've seen jobs disappear due to automation and new technologies. We've seen companies take their productions overseas because the cost of production was low, which means higher profits on their end, which means they didn't really give a crap about the people in the US. We saw this big ass melting pot of things happen as we got our education. But now that we got it, the jobs are scarce. The jobs that we hoped were there are scarce. So now we have these jobs that are just available. They're not paying us what we should be being paid. And again, the loans that we've taken, and I said it before, and I'll say it again, I think it is effing criminal for banks to give loans and details of said loans to 18-year-olds who you can't even have a drink yet. You can barely have a cigarette, but you can't even drink. You can't even rent a car. You can't get car insurance on your own. And these banks are coming to these students and saying, hey, we'll give you $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 and up at this rate just for you to go to college. Think of it as an investment in your future because that job that you get will be paying enough to where you'll be able to pay it back. We all banked on the idea that the job was there. And come to find out, the job was not. So we did what we had to do because we need a roof over our heads, clothes on our backs, food on our plates. We need our utilities. We found out that how greatly in this day and age, you need to have a cell phone. You have to have a car or a vehicle of some sort to get around. And especially if you have children, you got to pay daycare, doctor bills, things of that nature. All of this adds up because the price of these things since that time has went up. The generation of 2000, the class of 2001, now in their 40s, are all hitting the same note here. That yes, we have student loans, and not just 2001, classes before us, classes after us. All of them. There are some out there that still have student loans. Now think about that. Student loans are the one thing that just hangs around. It hangs around like a bad fish smell in your workplace. Not only that, it affects your credit, your debt to income ratio. It can prevent you from doing a lot of things. It can prevent you from getting a car. It can prevent you from qualifying for a home loan. It can prevent you from getting a job because jobs do credit checks too. So again, having that type of debt, despite your education, can be a major disadvantage. Which is why President Biden, may have gotten some brownie points on the campaign trail where he said, there's something we need to do about student loans. Now, did he ever sit there and say that it needs to be wiped out completely? No. Although I wish he did, because you had Representative Corey Bryant and you had Senator Warren saying, along with Bernie Sanders, all three people are saying, let's wipe out the student loan. Let's do something that helps out millions of Americans. Let's wipe out student loan. Let's wipe out student loan debt altogether. And you know who came crying about it? Those who saw it as, well, I don't want to pay for somebody else's decision because they decided they wanted to go to college. You know what else you had? Republicans. Well, they should never took out the loans and if they never wanted to go to college because that's just selling our grandchildren more debt while showing the clock of the national debt for the U.S. in the background, ever so climbing. But what's surprising about this is Democratic senators, Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, all sat there and said, we can't support this. Now imagine if all the Democrats, when they did have the House and they did have the Senate, and through budget reconciliation, could have actually passed a bill that could have gotten student loan debt wiped out. Millions of Americans would breathe easy. And just like the White House press secretary said, you would put money back in the hands of Americans because our economy is based on spending. If the middle and lower classes have money, they're going to spend. That's what keeps the economy going. That's what keeps things being purchased, things being made, things being shipped. And of course, because there's always a simple thing of supply and demand, more jobs have been created from that. But now we're dealing with inflation. Why are we dealing with inflation? Because again, prices have risen up, but pay hasn't. You heard the phrase, everything has gone up but your paycheck? That's what it is. Everything has gone up but your paycheck. Your rent has gone up, gas prices have gone up, insurance has gone up, food bills have gone up. Everything but your paycheck. That paycheck gets squeezed more and more each time. But what's amazing to me, that if you put student debt on top of it, now Americans are going to spend less while inflation still rising. Because, the feds believe that if we raise the interest rates on inflation, that it should bring everything down. No, that's right there with Reaganomics. It makes things harder. Because right now, the only people that are experiencing windfall profits are mostly corporations. Some individuals and their companies, maybe, but mostly corporations. I've never heard any of the gas companies complain about having a slow day. They're making billions. Amazon still making billions. Grocery stores still making money. All corporations in this day and age are having a Christmas. It's not even, and we're beyond July, it's really Christmas in September. But at the same time, all Americans want at this point is just to have a little bit of relief. And I say this before we go on to the next story. It amazes me so how student loans are always argued, but no one blinked an eye when the PPP loans got forgiven. When people who had the money and the opportunity to get loans chose not to, but went to the government and got anywhere from 5,000 to 500,000 to maybe over $1 million, all forgiven. So again, I point this out, as I will point out between the Democrats and the issue they're going to have, is that I would have to be a business to be forgiven because on the PPP loan side. Because let's be honest, unless you're a teacher or public servant worker, 9 times out of 10 your loan got forgiven. If you went to a for-profit school that basically kind of conned you into going there, and found out your degree wasn't worth the pen it's printed, it's printed on, then your loans would be wiped out too. But there's millions of other Americans out there that don't fit those credentials that could use help. And again, I'm looking at Joe Biden. I'm like, you can't sit there and say the Democrats took hope. You can't sit there and say the Republicans took hope. Because technically everybody in your party wasn't on board with the idea of wiping out student loan debt anyway. So that's the one time, Joe, yes, you do need to hold accountability for that. But speaking of accountability, guys, I keep talking about this. This hot labor summer as we're at the end of summer and going into the fall. But it's still going to be a hot labor fall because the biggest one so far on the docket, United Auto Workers, and that clock is ticking down on that. And if that strike were to happen, the car outlook in the future is not going to be so rosy.
American auto workers are poised to strike. The possible work stoppage could cost the big three automakers billions of dollars and send shockwaves through the U.S. economy. ABC News business reporter Alexis Christophers has more on that and your other business headlines. Alexis, what are you watching today?
We're watching the auto industry, Diane, because industry officials now say a UAW strike looks very likely when the union's contract expires September 14th. The big question, of course, is whether the UAW targets one of the Detroit automakers or all three at once. So the union's asking for a 46% pay raise, a 32-hour work week with 40 hours of pay, and a restoration of traditional pensions. Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis call the demands unrealistic. If a strike does happen, it could inflate already high auto prices, which are putting the squeeze on household budgets. According to the credit agency Equifax, defaults on car loans and delinquencies on credit card payments are now at a 10-year high as more consumers struggle with rising interest rates and higher prices for rent and groceries. Borrowing costs on credit cards could soar even higher if the Federal Reserve hikes interest rates again at the end of this month to bring inflation down to its target rate of 2% from its current 3.5%. And Elon Musk is threatening to sue the
Elon Musk is always threatening to sue everybody. But again, the auto workers, I keep pointing this out, 150,000 union members of United Auto Workers may be walking out sometime next week. I don't know how else I can say this. But again, I find myself saying this quite a lot. It is not that hard to appease American workers. Pay them. We see what happened with UPS. If UPS went on strike at the end of July, one of the biggest logistics companies in the world, one of the biggest, arguably, but if they went on strike, ain't nobody getting packages. But can you imagine United Auto Workers? Because they're working with the big three, Stellus, Ford, and GMC. Wait a minute. Stellus, Ford, and it actually might be Dodge. But anyway, what I'm saying is they will still have an impact. So, okay, more pay, 32-hour work week with 40 hours pay. That's not unreasonable. It's not. But I guarantee those corporation bigwigs will try to weasel or work their way out of it because we're already seeing that with SAG-AFTRA. We're already seeing that with the studios and the actors and writers guilds. Now the VFX artists are unionizing, and that's all great too. But again, it always what all strikes come down to is money. Pay them. They act like if we pay them, our bottom line is going to diminish. Never has that been said in the history of business. If we pay them, then that means we're getting less on our end. No, you're actually going to wind up getting more. Because again, when workers and people who work feel protected and cared for, and the company cares about them, the output is greater than somebody that's looking at that and going, okay, I just got to get through this for 8 hours, and right exactly at the end of the shift, I'm out no matter what's there. Oh, well, you're quiet quitting. No, people have been quiet quitting for nearly 80 years. It's just now that after a pandemic, it's just now that as things get tighter and tighter, that people are starting to come up in numbers. People are starting to come up in numbers and say, you know what? No, this is not This is not good. But we can change that. So again, the big three automotive workers, you've got till next week. It'll be so interesting to see what y'all do. But I guarantee, like most unions, and so far from what we've covered on here, every time there's been a strike, the unions won. So let's just say if we don't see anything by the end of this week, next Friday is going to be looking really fun. But switching gears for a second, guys, because again, going back to politics, I know we're sticking to that to a lot tonight, but Mitch McConnell, Jesus Christ. Whoever keeps system resetting Mitch McConnell, it was funny, but at the same time, there is a problem of age in politics. And I keep on saying this, there needs to be age limits and tenure limits in the Senate and the House of Representatives.
With Minority Leader Mitch McConnell after those uncomfortable moments, freezing in front of reporters on 2 separate occasions, appearing unable to speak for a time. The Capitol physician today releasing new information on McConnell's health. Let's get right to Rachel Scott, live on the Hill tonight. Rachel?
Well, David, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell largely brushing off that episode that he suffered last week back home in Kentucky. Tonight, the Capitol physician releasing a letter saying McConnell did not suffer a stroke, seizure, or any type of movement disorder like Parkinson's disease. But that letter was vague. It provided no further explanation as to why the 81-year-old Republican leader appeared to freeze twice in just over a month. We know McConnell suffered a concussion from a fall back in March, but all of this putting a spotlight on the age and the health of leaders on both sides of the aisle, including the frontrunners in the race for the White House. President Biden is 80, Donald Trump is 77. David?
Rachel Scott.
I mean, there's just some things that I got to point out. Number one, I don't like Mitch McConnell. I don't. I think he is compromised. I think his wife is a crook. They've gotten away with murder in Kentucky, literally. But Mitch McConnell is old. I mean, this man, this man at this point, you know what? He was probably the one that was basically questioning Moses at the Red Sea. That's all I'm saying. He was probably questioning him at that moment. I know it's a terrible joke, but go with it. But it goes to my point about the age of senators, representatives, and even our president. Don't get me wrong, Joe's in his 80s. Joe is old as dirt. He has made jokes about himself. Do I think he's still fit to be president? To a certain extent, no. To a certain extent, no. I mean, it would be interesting. It would be interesting to see other Democrats come up and challenge Joe for the Democratic presidential nomination. I highly doubt that's going to happen. But we've already seen multiple people turn around and try to go for the Republican national nomination, not the Republican nomination, not realizing that Trump has a commanding lead because his cult ever so follows him. But when it comes to ages, I think there needs to be a cutoff. We covered this a couple of weeks ago where you saw Democratic Representative Dianne Feinstein, and she was giving a speech when she was just supposed to vote yes or no. Her aide had to sit there and tell her, just say yes, yes. And again, this is just a handful. I said it before, and I'll say it again. We need to set age limits and term limits, because right now, neither of them exist for the Senate and the House of Representatives. As long as you run and win, you can keep your position until you croak. Some of them have, as I said, some of these positions, these people have lifetime positions. And I just think the simple fact of the matter is that our government should reflect our society. And again, we've got too much of the old guard still there in Congress. But the easiest way to solve that is to vote. I cannot stress this enough as we go into 2024. We must vote. If we do not, this is what happens. You get Trump nominated again, which, trust me, Trump is dying to have that done. If he can get nominated, that means that he can push everything aside for a little while. And that right there, my friends, is effing scary. But again, term limits should be the same as the president, 2 consecutive terms. But age, I'd say, look, age-wise, no higher than 60. 60 is the cutoff to me. If you're 60 years old, you should not be running for office. Because at that point, anything after 60 becomes questionable. I'll even give you 50, but 60, yeah, once you get to 60, that's like, nah, we can't trust that. Sorry. That's just the rules we got to have for that kind of stuff, because you're just going to wind up sitting there and you're just here for the pinch and the paycheck at that point. But speaking of things that they're here for the paychecks, the Supreme Court, specifically Justice Samuel Alito, who was a little bit mad because he sat there and said, let me pull this up for a second. He sat there and said with a complaint that he had done an interview that was published by the Wall Street Journal. That he sat there, and this was an interview conducted with David Wright, Rivican, where he sat there and said, quote unquote, no provision in the Constitution gives them the authority to regulate the Supreme Court, period. He is talking about Congress. Now, for all those that are wondering what I'm getting at, recently, guys, there have been questions of ethics with Supreme Court justices. Even more so that people are starting to wonder, is our highest court in the land compromised? Because we do have a heavy conservative-leaning Supreme Court that has already shown that there are certain things that they are striking down. They have struck down Roe versus Wade. They have struck down the college intro to affirmative action, which again, people don't believe that doesn't affect them. It affects us all. And keep in mind, they can still go back and strike down other legendary cases. But as news came out about Alito being wooed by Republican mega donors, Clarence Thomas hanging out with Republican billionaires, again, the questions of ethics comes up, and even Chief Justice John Roberts dodged the question. Amy Coney Barrett was like, oh, sure, I'm all for public scrutiny because there's nothing you can do about it. And surprisingly enough, Brett Kavanaugh is actually quiet for once. But the point I'm making out of all this is that there is no oversight to our highest court in the land, especially when you hear two Supreme Court justices divulge their financial records. And again, kind of shocking.
Breaking news when it comes to ethics at the U.S. Supreme Court. Just last hour, the 2022 financial disclosure forms for Justices Thomas and Alito were released. The two justices received an extension to file their reports. In his disclosure form, Justice Thomas disclosed trips that were paid for by billionaire Harlan Crow. The reports follow a series of articles revealing details of gifts and luxury travel paid for by Republican mega donors. NBC's Lawrence Hurley, who covers the Supreme Court, joins us this morning. Good morning. What else are we learning from these disclosure forms?
Well, I think there are two significant things on Thomas's forms in particular. First is that, this is for the first time that he's actually disclosed these trips that were paid for by his friend Harlan Crow. And previously, he hadn't disclosed these trips in previous years. And this was the first year where he has done it. So that's significant. The second thing is that he's quite defensive in his explanation as to why he didn't previously disclose them. He pins it on the fact that the judiciary changed its rules for what needs to be disclosed earlier this year, making it clear, really crystal clear for the first time, that things like private jet travel paid for by friends had to be disclosed. And so he's saying that the only reason really that he's disclosing it this year is that the rules have changed, and therefore he's showing that these trips to Dallas and other places did need to be disclosed this time. And also in this report, he addresses something else that was raised in the ProPublica articles, which is some real estate transactions in Savannah of property that he and other members of his family owned that was sold to Harlan Crow. And Thomas admits that he probably should have disclosed this previously, but said that he didn't feel like he needed to at the time, because when he sold the property, he didn't make any money off it because of previous investments he'd made into the property, which meant that he didn't actually make any money out of it.
So literally, you ever hear someone sit there and say, oh, well, it's only because they didn't change the rules. Wait, what? Are you freaking serious? That your kid's tuition was paid, your trips were paid, it goes down the list. That's all I'm saying. There is such a list of these things that it is, how can I be so nice about this? It's stupid. It's like, how do you not see the ethical problems with this? That's the part I'm having a hard time with. Because I'm not a judge. I'm not trying to sound judicial. I've never been to law school, never been any of these things. But I am just like, how in the blue of all things can you sit there and say that you can remain objective when honestly it looks like you've been bought and paid for? Oh, but they helped me out with properties that they paid on. You took rides on private jets that they paid on. They helped you buy property using their money. How is this not influential? And again, I understand. Well, you're only talking about Clarence Thomas and Alito. What about Sotomayor? What about Kajani Brown Jackson? Well, I would like to think if they're brought up that they will practically tell them themselves. But we've noticed with Clarence Thomas because his wife has already been accused of sedation is because she sat there and one of the votes stopped and even texted so. You're the wife of a Supreme Court justice, and how is that not a conflict of interest? This is the reason why I keep saying, guys, when it comes down to it, they have to have there needs to be oversight. There really and truly there is. There needs to be oversight. No matter how many ways that you cut the mustard on this, there needs to be oversight. Despite what the Supreme Court justice thinks, despite what Clarence Thomas thinks, that he thinks that he is above it all. No, sir, you're human. And if you can be bought and paid, if anybody can be bought and paid for, you're no different. But again, should not be surprised when it comes to the Supreme Court. But yes, an ethical committee needs to be created, but we need to depend on Congress to do it because they're the only ones at this point that can nominate or remove someone from office. I'm sorry, well, of course that, but they can also remove a judge. But when you have a Republican-controlled House of Congress and a Democrat-controlled Senate, you have a Republican-controlled House of Representatives and a Democratically controlled Senate, that becomes dicey because at that point you basically have the equivalent of the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox trying to basically see who walks away with the World Series trophy. That's pretty much the best analogy I got. But switching gears for a second, guys, especially my home state of Tennessee, you guys remember Marsha Blackburn, right?
Every death from opioids is heartbreaking. So I'm working with both parties to solve this crisis with $1 billion in new funding, new treatment options for veterans, and tough criminal penalties on drug makers who flood Tennessee with pills. I'm Marsha Blackburn, and I approve this message because the opioid crisis affects all of us. But working together, we can do something about it.
Yes, Marsha Blackburn, that pendejo. The reason why I bring her up, I try not to. It's kind of like the Wicked Witch of the West. You don't want to bring them up. Well, you guys remember the Tennessee Three, right? One of the Tennessee Three is actually running against her. That one right there, Representative Gloria Johnson, she was one of the big three that was basically contesting the House at the time, Tennessee House, just because of the shooting that occurred here in Nashville not too long ago, and that they really did push for gun reform here in Nashville. But Sexton and the rest of the Quiet House decided to silence those three and even tried to remove two of the ex-representatives. Of course, they're not here in this picture, but right there, Representative Gloria Johnson has announced that she will be running for state senate. And I'm all for it because I kept saying the entire time, folks, anybody, at this point, if you don't like the choices in front of you, and I keep on pointing this out, if you do not like the choices in front of you, you have two options. You can back a candidate that you can look at the candidates that are fitting your values and run with them, or you can run yourself. Representative Gloria Johnson decided to run herself, and she did battle. She not only did she battle, but at the same time, she won, and even more so, now running for Senate. So Marsha Blackburn should feel nervous because Many people have ran against Marsha Blackburn, but no one's actually went after her. I'm hoping this is a difference in change. But speaking of changes is, guys, because like I said before, I know I talked about the Republicans and their voter problems, but the Democrats got voter problems too. Right here, as it says in NBC News, Democrat elites struggle to get voters as excited about Biden as they are. That headline alone. To struggle to get voters excited about Biden as they are. Because many voters view the president as an old man. Yes, we view an 80-plus-year-old president as an old man. Because again, here's the problem with Joe. Joe's not bad. I mean, he's a moderate Democrat. They're Republican light because Biden is sometimes more conservative than liberal. But all in all, he's not a bad guy. The problem is he's out of touch with today's modern political landscape. In his mind, it's almost like being back in the 80s. And again, that's the problem. I mean, it's also like, well, we need someone with wisdom and knowledge and experience. And okay, I felt better about President Obama when he was running. I felt better about Bill Clinton when he was running. I even felt, no, I'm not going to take it back. I was going to say Al Gore, but Al Gore was different. But the thing is just that it's just like for most people, again, this comes down to choices. Well, it's either him or somebody on the Republican side. And I'm sorry, if a choice came down between Biden and whoever comes out of that travesty called a Republican nomination, I'm still going with Biden. But do I think Biden is out of touch? Absolutely. Because it's hard to get people to see where Biden is coming from. Because again, Biden doesn't really take accountability for his actions. He always blames somebody else. And that's the problem. Think about the Build Back America plan, which was supposed to actually get us back on track, which is actually supposed to help infrastructure, actually start the idea of actually doing mass transit, actually start the idea of raising minimum wage, actually trying to bring manufacturing back to the states. And he pushed that to his Democrats right in the middle of budget reconciliation. Budget reconciliation those words got used so many times you would have thought they were Beetlejuice. But for budget reconciliation to work, all Democrats in the Senate had to go along with it. The Democrats knew that they had the House on lock. The Democrats knew the House of Representatives at the time, they could pass anything that they want. The problem with budget reconciliation is you have to get your entire party to fall on the party lines. Something the Democrats have always had issues with, but somehow the Republicans got that down to an exact T. And what was the problem during all this? That simple fact of the matter is that two senators sat there and said, no, I can't go along with this, and screwed everything up. Then he wanted to talk about raising the minimum wage, which again, something that should have been done anyway, because at this point, minimum wage, if it's ever risen, is going to probably be close to the $30 mark by now. It really will be, because for a lot of people that don't understand this, minimum wage is basically the minimum amount required in order for you to have preferably a place to stay, food and clothes on your back, and be able to sustain yourself. That's what the whole idea of minimum wage is. It is really not how low a company can get away with paying you. It's the fact of what you can still do to get by, but you may not have a Rolls Royce, but you're not on the street either. That's what it used to be. Now, again, Biden's gonna have this problem because he did make a lot of promises that didn't sell, but he always seemed to blame somebody else. Even now on his student debt relief program, where $20,000, I'll knock off $10,000 or $20,000. Really, on people that have loans of more than $60,000 or $70,000 and up. I mean, yeah, it's a drop in the bucket, but I'm like, come on. We have forgiven PPP loans that we're still paying on. But at the same time, student loans still had to get passed. Well, you still got to pay your fair share. Again, Biden seems to be a little bit out the loop. And that's what's going to be a problem with voters, or with Democratic voters. Democratic voters don't want someone that's out the loop. They want someone that understands, that wants someone that's going to actually push things through and, again, take accountability. And that's always been Biden's problem, because he didn't get his Build Back Better plan. He didn't push hard. I mean, he can sit there and say that he did all he could for student loan debt. I still say it to this day, and I'll keep on saying it again. He could have done way more. Way more. He could have actually fought to make the minimum wage one of his platforms. He chose not to. He could have actually pushed the EPA to actually have harder regulations to cut down carbon emissions. But again, he caved to Manchin. I mean, I can keep going on this I can go down the list of where Biden should have taken accountability. And that's going to be his problem. Because he's going to sit there and say, well, the Republicans didn't want that. Well, no offense, Joe, neither did a lot of people in your party. And that right there says volumes about the man. Yes, his age is going to come into a factor, because we've seen what happened with Mitch McConnell. We've seen what happened with Joe. We've seen what happened with Dianne Feinstein. I mean, these people that are over the age of 65 are basically just walking corpses, just ready to fall on themselves. So yes, we should be heavily concerned. But the point I'm getting at here, guys, is just that Biden and the Democrat committee are going to have a hard time getting voters. Not because of the fact that nobody wants a second coming of Trump. It's a simple fact of the matter, guys, that, well, we simply want someone a little bit closer to us. It's just that simple. But speaking of things that are simple, would you like to believe that in Alabama that there's a bunch of lawmakers who are trying to make sure that black votes don't get heard? I'm not making that up. That's an actual story.
Tonight, Alabama lawmakers voting to move forward with a new congressional map after Republicans refused to include a second majority black district despite court orders.
You all have basically dropped the F-bomb on the United States Supreme Court.
The move comes after the U.S. Supreme Court and a federal court ruled that the state congressional map was violating black voters' rights, noting that while the state population is more than a quarter black, only 1 of 7 voting districts is predominantly black. The court ordered the state to redraw its maps to include 2 majority black seats or something quite close to it. But after a special session this week, the Republican-controlled legislature claiming they came to a compromise, maintaining a single majority black district and including a second one that's 40% black.
This is what we call an opportunity district on results of the elections. If you have a candidate that's well-funded and well-organized, it is an opportunity district. Anybody can win it.
Throughout the week, lawmakers considered 2 dueling maps. The House suggestion included a second district that is 42% black, while the Senate map included a district that is 38% black. But Democrats and voting rights advocates argued the map doesn't go far enough, and they say it ignores a Supreme Court ruling.
They don't give all of Alabama's citizens a seat at the table for their voices to be heard.
Alabama is proven to continue to be a very racist state.
This statewide battle coming with huge national implications. Republican Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, keeping a close eye on the debate.
I've talked to a few to see if they're going to do something about it. We've watched that we have a couple redistrictings out through all the places. I'd like to know where they're going to go.
NBC News confirming he has talked to Alabama legislators as they drew district lines with an eye towards maintaining his House majority. All eyes are now on Alabama as dozens of other redistricting battles plays out in states across the country. Jane Tim.
So, again, why should you be concerned? You should be concerned because I have been saying this for now going on 2 years, and I've yet to be wrong. That the essence of you voting, not just in the federal elections, but the local ones as well, that's why. Because you have people in Alabama who are simply trying to vote, but you have those who are afraid of what's coming. And I've been saying this, the political landscape in the U.S. is changing, and those who are African Americans who are fearful don't like the fact they're not going to be the dominant, they're not going to be the dominant majority anymore. The majority is now going to be the minority. The minority becomes the majority, and the majority becomes the minority. And once you've been on top for that long, You're afraid of what happens when the rabbits got the gun. And that's what they're trying to do. Because you know why? They saw it in Georgia. You saw it in Georgia in the special election. When Trump turned around and they said, oh, we're not going to worry about the mail-in votes. They're not going to count. Mail-in votes counted for quite a lot. At the same time, people were organizing, getting folks to vote, getting them registered to vote, being to make sure they can vote with no issue. They did all of this, even though Brian Kemp, who is now the governor, purged the voter polls of already registered voters, which means those same voters had to turn and re-register again. What the Republicans are doing is moving the goalposts. Even in Alabama, where they were told by the Supreme Court, mind you, that their redistricting was not only foul but illegal, but to redraw the maps, you have the Alabama legislation going, we'll think about it. Alabama has an overly conservative Congress there. And again, I keep pointing this out. This is why I keep on saying, guys, when it comes to voting, vote, be active, learn what's going on in your communities, learn what's going on with these politicians that you're sending to your local governments, because they're pulling this stuff against a Supreme Court order. And you have those same people in that same state of Alabama that simply want to exercise their right to vote. But you have certain African Americans out there that are simply scared of outcomes because of what happened in Georgia, which again, used to be traditionally a red state, has now become blue. Now makes all of those in that red camp very, very afraid. And they should be. But last story is a couple stories I got to get to our Feel Good News segment again. I said I was going to talk about the police, that the U.S. is experiencing a police hiring crisis. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe because nobody wants to get shot. Maybe because they're not doing enough. Maybe it's too easy to train somebody because it only takes less than 6 months and they're out in the force. But that's what's going on right now. The U.S. is experiencing a police shortage because they can blame, and a lot of people say, well, it's the pandemic. Oh, well, it's the criticism of police since George Floyd. Oh, well, it's the fact that there's certain oversights that are being elected that my split-second decision is going to be overlooked by people who weren't even there, can't do my job. You know what I always thought was interesting about that? Because it's always officers that complain, that protect and serve. But here's another reason why I think that there might be a hiring shortage. And again, I keep on saying the police, with their badge and stuff, they seem to have this green light, do anything they want. This is no exception. Parental discretion is advised.
Just trying to have a good time, go to play soccer.
Nelson Ochoa says he was in South Lawn Park in Oxon Hill on Labor Day enjoying a game of soccer with other families when a Prince George's County police cruiser pulled up and parked. He doesn't know what made him start to record, but he did.
As soon as I started recording, a car pulled up and then a young lady came out.
He recorded the two appearing to embrace and kiss and then get into the back of the officer's squad car.
We couldn't believe what we were seeing. And then what really made us go like, wow, like this is crazy is when, like I said, when the car started rocking a little bit to the left and right, that's when we were like, wow, this is crazy. And broad daylight with kids around. He was in the car for about 35 to 40 minutes.
Afterward, he says both quickly drove away in separate directions. Prince George's County Police released a statement on X, formerly known as Twitter, saying they were aware of the video and are investigating to determine the circumstances. They tell the I-Team they have identified the officer, though they have not released his name. Multiple police sources tell me it's Francesco Marlette, seen here in this picture. We reported on him back in 2016 when he was accused of beating his then-girlfriend's 3-year-old son. In 2019, the father of that child told me in an exclusive interview that he was trying to keep Marlette away from his son.
He would say, Daddy Francesco, which is his mom's boyfriend, hits me in my face and hits me in my stomach, and he's really mean.
According to the boy's medical records, the 3-year-old was spanked, resulting in a head injury. The Prince George's officers who responded that day ruled it an accident. A grand jury disagreed and charged Marlette. But after agreeing to anger management, Marlette never stood trial. The charges were dropped, his record expunged, and he was back on the force. His attorney declined to comment on the case at the time. A few years later, Marlette is making news again, now in this viral video.
I woke up this morning and it had 2 million views already.
Ochoa says he hopes police will take a close look at what's going on in this video.
Yeah, I'm glad I caught all of that on camera so Prince George can see the type of officers they have in office, working for them, supposedly protecting the community.
Yeah, protecting the community, protect and serve. Yeah, so again, yeah, it's nuts. This did happen in Maryland. But it's not just Maryland, because you guys remember it wasn't just a few months ago that Tennessee, specifically Laverne Police Department, was on the map for the same thing, that one woman really did serve 5 guys. That being said, it's another reason why police, you can sit there and chalk it up to, well, police just they just abuse things, or that nobody wants to deal with this. Nobody wants to be hounded for the decisions. But you don't talk about the fact of the over abuse of the power that's been given to you. Now, again, I sit there and talk about the fact that, a policeman decided to deter someone in broad daylight amongst children and things of that nature. But I find it interesting the lack of outrage over that. Even more so, this same officer may have been a child abuser and somehow not been placed as that. And yet at the same time, I keep on saying this. Those officers, when they're fired from a department, there needs to be a national registry. There needs to be a blacklist, because what's to keep those officers from just going to another city, another state, applying for law enforcement? Bingo, bango, you're a cop all over again. Or go to a no-name county and be a sheriff. You're a cop all over again. I mean, forget the backseat antics aside. It's simple fact of the matter is that's the problem with a lot of cops. They feel empowered by the badge, do whatever they want. And even more so, the special treatment that they're given when they've been caught in the act or endangering a child. All I'm saying is, yeah, that's the problem. There is a police issue, not just a police hiring shortage. There's a police issue in America. And until there is accountability accepted on the law enforcement side to really enforce what's going on, it's going to keep going on. Simple and plain. But we're guys going to go more into our feel-good sipping, because usually how the Frack we got here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes make you lose your faith and lose your faith in humanity sometimes. But hey, it's Wednesday, it's hump day. We're trying to get you guys out on the good notes, good vibrations. And I love the fact of when good things happen, great things happen for good people. And this 9-year-old definitely did win the week.
Well, our next guest may not be able to read music, but he has always been able to see and feel the power of it. You see, 9-year-old Grayson Roberts is blind, and he really wanted to raise more money for travel. And when mom suggested a lemonade stand, well, Grayson knew exactly the extra ingredient he needed.
What's up, man?
What's up?
How you doing?
Good.
This is a nice setup you got going on. Hold on, let me read your sign. Hi, my name is Grayson. I was born blind. I do not let that stop me from doing everything. I love music and I love to travel. I am raising money to see the world. Will you help me reach my dream? Wow, man. Can I buy some lemonade?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's perfect for a hot day, isn't it?
Maybe we can help get some more customers here. Grayson, you got your first customer. Grayson, you got another one. Drumming up business.
Get it? Drumming up business?
Drumming up business? Oh my God, I didn't think about that.
That's right. As soon as he started playing the drums, he did drum up the business, and he drummed up the cash. It was a pretty slow day for Grayson, but he grabbed his drumsticks, and then that grabbed the attention of social media superstar Charlie Rocket. And after Charlie posted the video, well, this happened.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
What's up?
What's up, Grayson? How are you? Nice to meet you.
You too.
I brought you some drumsticks.
Man, those are sick.
And I
Would you like a cup?
I brought some donations for you too. I brought some money for you. Yeah, I would love a cup of lemonade.
How many cups?
Can I get 2?
All right. You want any sprinkles?
Sure.
That is Blink-182 drummer Travis Barker. He saw Grayson's video that went viral and not only bought some lemonade well over the asking price, They had a jam session. Joining us now, the newest drummer and singer to hit the rock scene, Grayson Roberts, and the man, well, who should now be his manager, social media influencer Charlie Rocket. Hey, guys, we're on live now.
Hi.
Grayson, you heard yourself drumming, didn't you? You heard yourself jamming. I love it. Okay, we are now on live, and I'm going to ask you all kinds of fun questions. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so Grayson, Charlie, as you know, who's sitting next to you, that shot that video, won a Grammy after he discovered 2 Chainz. Have you discussed a record deal yet with Charlie Rocket?
No.
Okay, I know you're laughing, but yeah, being serious. He was actually what?
He was actually saying something about making a song, he was actually saying something when we were doing the lemonade stand, a joke about making an album or a song.
Okay, well, are you up for it?
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Grayson. Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
I think anything Grayson does will be massively successful.
I have no doubt, because just look at we seek sunshine in this segment, and he's brighter than the sunshine. That smile, Grayson. And Grayson, how did it feel to be, drumming with a superstar like Travis, with Blink 182?
When he said we could drum together, I was shocked.
Really? Why were you shocked?
Because I didn't think I couldn't believe that a famous drummer, Travis Barker, could have time to drum with me.
Oh, and it was so awesome, Grayson. We're looking at it right now. We're seeing the video. And Charlie, what was it about Grayson that made you stop at that lemonade stand? I know you saw his drum set up, right? Mm-hmm. What made you fall in love with this 9-year-old drummer?
Well, it actually started with one of our volunteers for our foundation, the Dream Machine. She told us about Grayson, and we went on his Instagram and just fell in love with him. And I was like, this kid is not letting anything stop him from doing everything he dreams of. And then when we went to go meet him, we just kind of activated our army of love and our dream machine, and the rest is history.
Oh, and Grayson, I see you're wearing the same T-shirt that you were wearing with Charlie and Travis Barker that day. What does it say?
I am limitless.
Darn right you are. And what does that mean? What does that mean to you, Grayson? How has your mom told you, son, you are limitless? What does that mean?
Anything you think you can't do, you can. You just have to try and put your mind to it.
And what did you love about drums when you first got on that drum set at like the age of 2? Why did it feel good to you?
Because they were loud.
And so, Charlie, what's next? I know that you love mentoring people and making things happen. What do you foresee now for this amazing little drummer here?
Well, I think Grayson is truly limitless, and he's getting requests to do pop-ups with his lemonade stand. Mm-hmm. He's studying all the different instruments. He just got a bass guitar, and oh, wow. I think he's the smartest little entrepreneur and musician, and I think he's going to not just do one thing. I think Grayson's going to do a lot of things in his life, and he's going to the Great Wall of China, which I know he was really excited about.
Well, that was my final question. Grayson, how much money did you earn, and is that your next trip, the Great Wall of China?
Yes.
Yeah. So Booking.com stepped up and they gave him a trip. And I believe Grayson, I'll have to ask his mom specifically, but I think Grayson has earned or has raised over $20,000 in donations.
Woo! Oh my gosh, Grayson, you're gonna have to get some new drumsticks, Grayson. What do you think? All right. Well, I know you did something special for us, Grayson. I know you did a little jam session. So, Charlie, what we thought, you've been so amazing. We appreciate you both so much, but we're going to kind of wrap the show with a little jam session here that Grayson did just for Travis. All right. Sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm waiting for that record deal. Keep me posted, Grayson and Charlie.
Thank you, Miss Kira.
All right. And thanks for streaming with us. I'm Kira Phillips. From all the breaking news to the stories that matter to you, including incredible 9-year-old drummers, we take you now to break with a little jam session via Grayson.
You know what? I am not crying. You're crying. Hell, I was crying. I'm not gonna tell. I'm not gonna lie about that. That right there is just. Kids amaze me. Kids really and truly amaze me. Especially that young man. He gonna be drumming. So trust and believe he gonna be drumming somewhere. Some school or band is gonna be lucky and he gonna be something else, but damn, I'm not crying, you're crying. That being said, thank you. That's gonna do it for the podcast, guys. Thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate it. Some shameless plugging before we do get out of here, guys. I do want to shout out the curator of the beats for this podcast, Big BZA on all social media. You can definitely check out his YouTube music page where he does have music up for free. The man is definitely talented. If you are interested in having beats made, or if you hear something that he's produced that you love to have for yourself, definitely check him out, Big BZA on all social media. As for myself, as for myself, Black Fox 447 on all socials where you can find me. I usually do reviews on everything that I watch, that I play, that I listen to, and gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. The link at the bottom and make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, we'll take you to my link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit, and of course, the Office Podcast. Definitely like, definitely share, definitely subscribe. Let me know what you think of everything we discussed. The only rule that I have is keep it clean, keep it informational. Again, we're not trying to do a thing of who's right, who's wrong. Let the numbers and facts do that. But we can't agree to disagree. That's all I ask. Aside from that, guys, again, definitely just be kinder to people. Be kind. Be kind. You don't know what battle a person's fighting. Don't be a dick. I find myself saying that a lot. Just simply don't be a dick. Of everything that's going on in the world, simply put, don't be a dick. Be nice. Be kind. In the words of Roadhouse, be nice until it's time not to be nice. But yeah, like I said before, get involved. Be informed. Know the candidates. And again, if you want to run for yourself, there are plenty of websites out there to where you can find out how you can run for office. That's all I'm saying. But the last thing I'll say about How the Frack Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information allowing you to make up your own mind. But we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then. Like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman as a National Cybersecurity Director. All great things. We don't learn from history. We are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up with your paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll all get through.